program starts in 10 minutes. This program starts in 5 minutes. This program starts in 2 minutes. This program starts in 1 minute. This program starts now.
Track. Hyderabad Runners, founded in May 2007, is the first group in India to institutionalize running with the mission to promote running as a preferred form of exercise. As part of our initiatives to keep you constantly aware and educated in these uncertain and turbulent times of COVID-19, we bring you Beyond the Track, a live webinar series of conversations with some of the highly distinguished experts from running and related sports. Today, we have with us a very special guest. When he takes up a task, he finishes it in the best way possible, be it serving a country, an adventurous endeavor, or an ultramarathon. He makes a mark in everything he does. He is one of the finest officers in Indian police, a phenomenal athlete and a great human. He's a leader by example to many aspiring officers. He's none other than Shri Atul Karwal, IPS Director, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, National Police Academy, Hyderabad. And we have another accomplished IPS officer interacting with our guest and facilitating today's session. Currently posted as SP Kamareddy, right from her first assignment, she has proved to be a dynamic investigative officer who has cracked many challenging cases. She is also a fitness enthusiast and an avid runner. As a probationer at NPA, she also ran Airtel Hyderabad Marathon in 2013. It's my privilege to welcome Ms. Shweta Reddy. As someone who believes in same principles, values, and inspired by Atul sir in many ways, who else than you, ma'am, to better understand and interact with him? I request you to welcome and introduce him to our audience. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Nilima. It feels great to be part of this webinar series, Beyond the Track. Fitness is a journey, not a destination. It is easy to say, but not to follow. Atul sir, however, is a personification of the highest standards of that very principle. Be it serving the country, adventurous endeavors, or an ultramarathon, he makes a mark in everything he does. Open skies, deep oceans, majestic mountains, and long roads. Sir has conquered them all. He is an inspiration for many as to how to balance a demanding profession with passion, ease, and poise. It is my honor, and I consider it a privilege to be on the same platform and interact with him today. Shri Atul Karwal is Indian Police Service Officer of 1988 batch, born on Gujarat Kadar. Right from his days of training, he strived for excellence in everything he did, be it his profession or his professional endeavors. Sri Atul Karwal has dedicated himself in service of the nation, bringing pride to the Indian Police Service. He served as Superintendent of Police of 5 districts, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Joint Commissioner of Police in various cities of Gujarat. Sir discharged his duties in challenging positions such as Inspector General in Jammu and Kashmir sector in Central Reserve Police Force. He has also led paramilitary forces in conducting many successful anti-terrorist operations. With such excellence, awards and medals came naturally. Indian Police Medal in 2010, President Police Medal for Distinguished Service in 2016, and Commendation Disc from Director of National Police Academy, Director General CRPF, Director General Jammu and Kashmir, to just name a few. Notably, Sir has also received for his service in Jammu and Kashmir Police Medal for Gallantry, Kathina Seva Patakam, Parakram Patakam, and Ati Utkrishta Seva Patakam. And Perka Pranas, Sir is not just in service and adventure. Sir is also an ace athlete, a trained police commando with National Security Guard, black belt holder in martial arts. He's also trained in scuba diving and skydiving. He's an ultra marathoner who completed 50 kilometers and 100-kilometer runs and a half Ironman triathlon, who successfully scaled Mount Everest in 2008. I'm very happy to welcome Shri Atul Karwal, IPS, Director Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, National Police Academy, Hyderabad. Welcome, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Shweta. Good evening to everyone on board. Thank you to Nilima and Shweta for your kind words, and thanks to Rajesh Vedcha and the Hyderabad Runners Club for this opportunity of interacting with all of you. I think what I'll do is I have a presentation for you. I would like to show you that and then save time towards the end for more interaction. I joined as the director of the academy about 7-8 months back, and I'm very happy to note that the Hyderabad Runners Club has agreed to partner us for training the IPS officers in their fitness endeavors. So, I would like to start with the shloka. Shriram Madhyam Khalu Dharma Sadhanam. Whatever you want to achieve in life, the body is the medium. Whether you want to achieve athletic excellence, professional excellence, even spiritual excellence, the body is the only medium that you have to achieve any of those. I think I can share my own slide screen. Can we do that? I would be more comfortable doing that. If you would stop this sharing, I could start sharing my screen. Yes, thank you. I hope you can see this. Just a minute. I think I'm doing something wrong. Yes, sorry for the glitch. How did I get addicted to pushing my limits and pursuing all these kind of things which you just heard? In school, I was not very strong. I was short and very, very weak. I would say that till about high school, I was 4 feet 11 inches and wasn't really able to participate in school games and things which normally school children do. But there was some early conditioning. My father was into fitness. He was in the civil service himself, and he used to push me, and I started doing some bit of weight training and running while I was in college. But the police academy training is what really put me on track. A lot of things that police academy does in the basic training of Indian police service officers is really something which opens their hearts, makes them more courageous, pushes their limits. And that is something which made me blossom forth, though at a much later stage in life. I have some very interesting friends. Case in point is Mohit Oberoi in Delhi, who keeps doing Ironman, triathlons, and other such stuff. So I have the company of people amongst my friends who are not in the government, but they're into adventure. And that really puts ideas into my head and they push me to do things which otherwise in my busy life, I may not find time for. So this is something I recommend anyway for people who want to get into adventure, get into that circle, those kind of people who can then egg you on to do something more exciting. In the police academy training, I learned to confront my fears, if I can say that. It's not that I don't get scared doing these things. Skydiving still scares me a whole lot. The If I have to do a skydive tomorrow morning, I will not spend a very comfortable night and won't get good sleep because that moment of jumping out of a plane, a flying plane at 7,000 feet still scares me. But I have learned to confront those fears and actually now when something scares me, I ask the question whether I can confront it. Can I get over that fear? What in it is it scaring me? And how can I get over that particular problem by preparing better, by getting more educated? And how can I still go ahead without that fear taking a decision for me? I also feel that I am 56 now and I still feel as young as my probationers who are generally half my age or younger. Uh, and I try and keep up. So there is a plus point in being physically active that you have the energy for doing whatever you want to do till much later in life. I'm inspired by personalities. I'll introduce to some of them towards the end of this presentation because those of us with all four limbs intact don't really have any excuse compared to people who are combating and overcoming much more overwhelming odds. And those kind of biographies, examples, they show me the light and I realize that if they can confront something which is so huge, then I don't really have any excuse to try out a little more and push myself a little more. In the police academy training, we have a lot of inputs. Physical fitness is just one of those. A lot of operational fitness is there that if you need to conduct an operation in the jungles with your men, you should be able to carry your weight, walk long distances, fend for yourself, bear the hardship. Those kind of training activities also are organized. Horse riding is part of the curriculum, so is swimming. We need to clear that. Unarmed combat is an input. Adventure sports in which we learn rock climbing, water sports, weapon training, fieldcraft and tactics about judging a terrain, planning an operation, map reading, navigation, a lot of firing with all kinds of weapons. And drill certainly is a part because we get a graduate person into the police, a normal civilian, and then they learn to carry themselves with the pride of uniform in situations and confront them with courage and steadfastness. So police academy training really did a whole lot for me. And I think it transformed me really from a person who was not very strong mentally or physically into somebody who likes to push his limits even now. This is a picture of my way back. I was declared the best probationer of the batch and I commanded the parade. The then Home Minister of India, Shri Mufti Mohammad Sayed, was presenting this trophy to me. You can see look at the waistline. I was very slim and wiry that time at the end of training. This is a picture of my family. My wife also is serving. She's in the IAS. She is Secretary, School Education, Government of India, and was the architect of the National Education Policy, which just got announced. Two daughters, both in the US. The one on the left, who is graduating with a bouquet. She is into film producing, works with Amazon. And one on the right, the younger one, Tanvi, is a physics PhD, and she works in University of Pennsylvania now. I'm really proud of them. And I think from my experience as a police trainer now, I have spent about 8 years in training during my 32 years of police duties. I see that the girls, the ladies who come to the police force at any level, from constables to IPS officers, do much better. They apply themselves with more vigor. They expect better from themselves, and they are much more non-complaining. Sitting is called the new smoking these days. So this is an American study which said that on an average, Americans sit about 11 hours per day, and 20% of all deaths which happen to people 35 years and older are attributable to lack of physical activity. It is one of the major killers. These days, we have so much of luxury, so much of facilities that we lead a much more sedentary life, and that is becoming a cause of mortality to a much larger extent. things which get affected because of sedentary lifestyle. I think all of you are aware. I don't need to read this, but obesity is a huge problem in the developed countries. Cardiovascular problems are there, and which lead to many other things as well, including hypertension, diabetes, etc. So as I mentioned, of all the major risk factors with all-cause mortality, physical activity, inactivity, and low fitness are two major reasons. Something that, interestingly enough, the plus point is they are curable, and the cure lies with you. You can decide to be physically more active, and you can decide to be much fitter. Going ahead, what has been my learning? My learning has been that I feel that we need to spend our money not so much on material possessions. Most people have what it takes to lead a comfortable, simple, dignified life. The money should be spent on experiences, not on possessions, on fitness gear. I feel if you spend your money on your fitness gear, on your running shoes, on your track suits, on your t-shirts, on your gloves for weight training, it'll egg you on. It'll make you more motivated to work out. And plus, you'll feel a little guilty if you spend so much of money on the gear and you don't go to exercise. So investing in these things is actually motivational in many more ways. And if you invest in your health, that would lead you to living in a body all through your life in a more fulfilling manner. Another thing which has been researched upon is that which affluence leads to greater happiness. Time affluence would be that when you do something, a job or a career or a profession where it leaves you some time for your own hobbies and passions, or you take up such a busy job or maybe more than one job that you are working 16 hours a day and you don't have time, though you have a lot of money. So time affluence, having time on your hands to live the life that you want to live, is more connected to lasting happiness than having more money than time. It's a great bonding activity with family and kids. If you are a family man, you married, have kids, if all of you get involved, the kids would remember those times spent with you as a parent so much more strongly than just watching movies or watching TV or doing such things which normally kids get addicted to these days. A lot of children in the present generation, though very smart, much smarter than we used to be at this age, more informed, they are in a virtual world for many hours of the day, and the real world, the hardships, the physical exertion, labor, hot weather, no electricity sometimes, no water sometimes no transport, you walk long distances, those kind of things, they are not used to anymore. So the risk is that if the child doesn't get the facilities that you presume they would get all through life, if that particular child has to face a hardship, fend for themselves in a strange country, learn to cook for themselves, sleep without the facilities that they are used to, they might not be able to really handle it. So physical activity, fitness activities, adventure activities will make people more resilient, more courageous, and they would be more confident of handling themselves in an adverse situation. It's a wonderful de-stressor. All your frustration, anger at the boss, of not getting a promotion or a raise, or not being given a fair deal, though you did your best, can flow out in your exercise regimen in the mornings or evenings. It can and will make life more fulfilling and rewarding. You ask anyone who has attempted a half marathon from scratch, physical achievements leave you with a sense of fulfillment. You feel good about them, and you carry that goodness through all other aspects of life. So challenging yourself and doing something which seemed improbable, which seemed scary, seemed difficult, can really leave lasting, wonderful memories for you to count on and make you more tough from inside. And when you get into that circle, you will meet people, interesting people, whom you would have never met had you not got into that activity. I'm sure the Hyderabad Runners Club, for example, brings in people from all streams of life, and they get together and they run together and they get to know each other, which otherwise they would have never had a chance to had they just stuck to their profession and their home life. So getting out and doing something new, you will meet new exciting people, and they will show you so many more hues and perspectives of life, and this will enrich the way you look at life. You will live longer and fuller. Sometimes living longer is not enough, because you could be living long but being in the hospital for most part of it, or not really well enough to do the stuff that you want to do with the extra time you had in your life. So living longer is only good if you live healthy and energetic to pursue all the stuff that you want to. You can face challenging situations much better. For example, this factor X of COVID-19 hit us from nowhere. Life has changed so much in the last few months. Things that we took for granted, travel, meeting friends, having parties, having a good time, getting together for anything, all those things have been questioned. And when such crisis hits human life, which it will, that is the nature of life, its unpredictability, then if you're a fitter, more energetic person, you will sail through it in a much better fashion than somebody who was already unfit. And this kind of a problem might get them down completely. So you need to be prepared for the unpredictable. And for that, not being fit is a big no. You can explore new places. You can explore new foods, cultures, perspectives. Many people, for their half Ironman, for their marathons, half marathons, they travel to other countries. It's a travel plus business come pleasure kind of a thing where you go run and you also have a look at, roam around that country and get to know something more about the different culture that country has. Some pictures of my skydiving. I was really wanting to do this. I got a chance, so I did about 15 jumps till now, out of which 5 were free falls. So this is something which scares me the most. But it is so exciting to jump out of a plane. Once the parachute opens, you are hanging 1.5 kilometers up. The world is spread out beneath your feet. And the view is amazing. And the ram air canopy, which we now use, the one that you see here, is so maneuverable. It's like a car in the sky. You can steer it the way you want it. You can take it wherever you want it. This is the scuba diving with my daughter, the younger one. We went to Red Sea, Egypt for a live on board, where we lived on a boat for 7 days. And we had 4 dives a day. Amazing water. Cycle from Manali to Khadungla. This is not very uncommon. Then we also cycled to Mansarovar Lake through Tibet. The altitude was killing, 12 to about 17,000 feet. From the border of Nepal to Mansarovar Lake is 500 kilometers. We cycled for about 350 of those. And this is the kind of terrain. The roads were amazing, but the altitude was something we had to really kind of contend with. This is the kind of view, the skies that you see. The place is so beautiful, so open. We used to camp wherever we used to find a green place, a small stream. These are our tents in the late evening. Mansarovar Lake, if so, some of you have not seen it. Mount Kailash, a closer view of Mount Kailash. I've been there twice. How to do it? I feel that we need to take a step back from our busy lives, maybe sit with a cup of coffee or tea in our hands, devoid of any distractions or telephone calls, and look at how we are leading our life and where would it lead us eventually. Would it lead to lifestyle diseases like diabetes, like hypertension, other stress issues, obesity, or is it really where you want to go? You must prioritize your life. What happened? Did I do something here? I'm sorry. Okay. And take out time for that. Things that you want to do in life. You need to declutter, not just physically, mentally as well, so that the basic things that you value in life get time for. And fitness certainly should be one of them. Focus on the important aspects. My question to you all who are listening in would be that if down the line, in a year or 2, 4, 5 years, doctors diagnose you as somebody who has a morbid kind of a condition which can really pull down your health or cause more damage, and he tells you now you have to do it, because now if you don't do it in 3, 4 years time, you could be suffering much more or you could die. With that kind of a shock, you will certainly change so many things. Suddenly life will come to a grinding halt and everything would become unimportant and you would just focus on getting back into health and fitness. My question is, do you need to get shocked to do that, or can you take a conscious decision now that you never reach that stage? I would say involve yourself in clubs. An example again is Hyderabad Runners Club. Involve your family, spend on gear, as I mentioned, including nutrition, set a routine. And when you set a routine or you reward small accomplishments for yourself, announce to the world that you are going to do that. And then it becomes difficult to come back from. So, for example, there could be a half marathon coming up. Anybody can run a half marathon from 10 years onwards to 70 years, given a few months to prepare. You might walk part of the way, but completing it is great. And when you commit to a time-bound target, when it is fixed at such and such date, the event is there, then routine becomes easier and life becomes certainly simpler and more focused. My suggestion also is when you commit to it, tell everyone you know, tell your family, tell your friends. And now when you withdraw from it, they're going to make fun of you and that will make you stick to that. That's what I do for my skydiving thing because it scares me. I tell everyone I'm going to come tomorrow and everybody knows so-and-so is going to come and jump with us tomorrow. And then even if it scares me, now I can't withdraw, I lose face. So I am forced to go through and disregard my fears and carry on with it. So this is something which I have found as a trick to get over the fear that my mind will generate. And you never know, when you're fit and you're energetic, you might get a chance to do something which is absolutely amazing. I'll share one such experience with you very shortly. How do I train? I am regular. I try and get out every morning, 7 days a week if possible. One day could be light, but I do get out every morning. I cross train. I don't just run. I feel that to become fit enough to do adventure activities, I must have overall fitness. So I run, I cycle, I started swimming for the triathlon. I do strength training, do yoga and stuff like that. And martial arts, I've been learning for the last about 27 years now. I've invested in health, as I mentioned. I never used to do much of flexibility, but that's causing me issues now. So I urge all of you, flexibility sometimes seems boring, not required. It doesn't excite you or you don't see any advantage, but please focus on that as well, because down the line, it will start causing injuries. Mornings are always free, even in the police. So before 9 o'clock, nothing much moves. So if you're an early riser, that's a great plus. Targets determine my routine. If I'm aiming for a triathlon, my routine changes. For a cycle ride, it changes. For a marathon, ultra marathon, it changes. So I don't have a fixed routine, but I change the routine based on what I want to achieve. I feel that if it's raining or it's cold, that's to be enjoyed. I love running in the rain, and many people like playing football in the rain. So my suggestion is, if it's raining, if it is cold, just gear up for that and get out. You will start loving it. Now, preparing for the Everest. So the dream which came true for me was of the Everest. And I had been thinking about that from as long back as I can remember. As a youngster, I spent a lot of vacation in the mountains, and my ambition was that I should at some point save enough money to do a base camp trek and see the goddess, as I consider it, in person. And as luck would have it, as the law of attraction would have it, I got a chance to climb. I was having a busy police life, and my family really supported me. My wife in particular, daughters were small. And along with my job, I used to prepare for the Everest. I was in Ahmedabad, so I didn't have a mountain to train on. But twice a week, I had a 25, 27 kilo pack. I used to come back from office by 7ish, have dinner at 8, sleep off till 12, get up at 12, gear up and carry that 27 kilo pack and walk on the city roads from 12 to 5 in the morning, come back, have a quick bath, go back to sleep, 2 hours of sleep, back to office. This used to become a routine because I had to train my body to carry a heavy pack as I would do on the mountain. In a similar workout, aside from my normal cardio, yoga, pranayam, strengthening that I used to do morning and evening, once in a week, I would go to a 12-story building and climb it 15 times, do 180 floors with the heavy pack on my back, simulating a climb up the mountain, carrying my load. So this is the way I used to train, because Everest was so close to my heart, and I was not a very professionally qualified mountaineer. My only chance of succeeding was if I bring a lot of fitness to bear. And I did my mountaineering course, the basic course, and then I had the chance to climb, and this is what happened. This is in 2008. I was part of the Indian Mount Everest expedition, Indian Police. This is the scheme. If you can see my cursor there, this is the base camp at 17,500 feet. The expedition takes about 2.5 to 3 months. Base camp stays about 6 weeks at 17,500 feet. From there, we move to Camp 1, to Camp 2 at 21,000, Camp 3 about 24,000, and Camp 4, the South Col, at 26,000 feet. And we don't do it in one go. You do 4 acclimatization climbs. You climb a little higher, stay a little longer, come back to base camp. Next time you climb a little higher still, stay longer still, and come back to base camp. So the last acclimatization climb is to Camp 4 till 24,000 feet, and then you come all the way back to the base camp, and now you rest and look for a weather window and then attempt the summit, which takes now 5 days if you are lucky and the mountain goddess is kind. Interestingly enough, from Camp 4, that is 26,000 feet, to the summit, the climbs done in the night. The reason is that Everest Massif is large enough to create its own weather, and whatever weather predictions you might have access to, you still are not very sure that the weather would sustain. So the plan is that you climb through the night, reach the summit early in the morning, and get off the summit and back to camp by the afternoon, so that when the weather normally spoils by afternoon, you are not left vulnerable on the slopes. So this is the scheme of the climb. There is something which I keep doing. Okay. The climb starts with a walk from Lukla. So you take a 40-minute flight from Kathmandu, land at a place called Lukla. And from here, it's a 9 or 10-day walk to the base camp. This is Namche Bazar, the headquarters of the Sherpas, as it is called. Thamsirku, beautiful mountain on the way. Lovely wind that day. You can see the prayer flags blowing. Amadablam, a uniquely shaped, very graceful mountain right next to Everest. Mother's Jewelry Box, that is the name, Amma Ka Dibba. And next to that is Nupse, and next to that is Everest. These stone canes you see are built in the memory of mountaineers who died there. So it brings back the present very quickly in focus. This is the base camp. All camps, including the base camp, are on the glaciers, on ice, on moraines. We had one tent each, the red tents that you see. This is the base camp picture. You are camping on a moving glacier, which is moving 1 foot a day. So the ground beneath your tent keeps changing shape. It can have crevasses coming up. You need to pick up your tent, take it elsewhere. This is an avalanche happening at the back. Avalanches gather speeds of 150, 200 kilometers an hour. Impossible to outrun. You just have to keep out of the way. Now, this is a setting which I would like to explain a little bit more. This is in the front is called a lapso, a prayer pole which is carried up by big expeditions like ours, and you pray to the mountain goddess for safety and success before you set foot on her. At the back of lapso is the Khumbu Ice Fall, which is one of the most dangerous places on the climb. About 50% casualties happen in the Khumbu Ice Fall. And then on the left, you see the west shoulder of Everest. The summit is far behind, can't be seen from here. This was a lovely day with a rainbow between Nupse and Everest and the Khumbu Ice Fall. Now, this is the Khumbu Ice Fall. It takes about 4 to 5 hours to cross for a slow climber like me. And we cross it not once or twice, but 10 times. If you recall, 4 acclimatization climbs up through the Khumbu Ice Fall, 4 descents, then the 9th one for the summit, and 10th one to come safely back. This is a crevasse crossing. This is the kind of climb which is there through the Khumbu Ice Fall. Now we are nearing the edge of the Khumbu Ice Fall, the top edge. This Khumbu Ice Fall is a flowing glacier. It's a 500 feet thick sheet of ice, which is falling down 2,000 feet over a cliff. You can imagine the kind of size of seracs and ice structures that it would have, and it is flowing down at the rate of 3 feet a day. Therefore, it is unstable, and it has happened that it causes casualties because unstable structures fall on climbers. This is a quick video which I can come back to in case we have time towards the end of how it looks like when you cross a crevasse and you're looking down, or I think I'll show it anyway.
Falling down early because later on, I don't like to fall again. When you look down, you wonder how deep is that crevasse. Well, I don't want to find out. The Sherpas.
These are taken from the IMAX film on Everest, which was shot on the
Say
Everest in
that if you fall in the
1996.
crevasse, you will fall all the way to America. You're falling down early.
This is Camp 1, height 19,500 feet. You can see that lovely snow plume at the back. It is not a cloud. At this altitude, you have jet streams, which are high-speed winds, 150 kilometers an hour, for example, which blow the snow off the top of the mountain. And that's a high-speed wind blowing the snow off the peak in the background. Now this, when you start walking towards Camp 2 from here, you can see the Everest on the left side. That big black mountain we see is the Everest, and we can see the summit from here now. On to Camp 2, height 21,000 feet. See those small little tents in the right bottom corner. This is my picture on the top of Camp 2. I wanted to show you something here. So this mountain you see at the back, if you can see my cursor, is Lhotse, the 4th highest mountain in the world. And this is called the Lhotse face, the ice wall, which is 5,000 feet high, which goes from Camp 2 to all the way up to the yellow band, which is at 25,000 feet, is a huge climb, which is done in 2 days' time. It's called the Lhotse face, and it's a wall of ice and snow, sometimes at 70 to 90 degrees. You can see climbers on the Lhotse face now. You can see some structures in the middle here. There's a camping site in the middle and a long line of climbers going up. This is our team in the yellow and black down suits climbing the Lhotse face and to Camp 3, which is one of the most uncomfortable places to be because it's at an angle. It is on a slope, and if you slip, a fall could be as much as 2,000 feet and it could cost you your life. So you normally, even to move from tent to tent, you anchor yourself. And interestingly, going back to that, I was fit all through for the 2.5 month long period that we had for the expedition. But on the summit attempt, when we were going for the summit, I had a bad case of diarrhea at Camp 3 here, and I spent most part of the night sitting outside the tent doing my business. So dehydration had set in, but that is another story. But this is a very uncomfortable place to not to be well. Onwards to the yellow band, which is a limestone structure at 25,000 feet, and to Camp 4. This is South Col, 26,000 feet. You can see the lovely view from here. And we start using oxygen here. And this is how the summit looks like. But this is not the real summit. This is South Summit. The real summit is behind it. So the schedule of the climb is that from Camp 3, you climb for 8 hours to reach Camp 4. You take a 4-5 hour break, and then you climb for 18 hours more to climb to the summit through the night and then back to Camp 4. So it's a marathon climb after that. I'll show you a short clip of how it looks like when you climb in the night.
Following Ed's trail.
In the night, with my goggles and oxygen mask, I felt like I was on the moon. The others were nearby, but we never spoke. I felt completely alone. All I heard was the sound of my own breathing through the oxygen mask.
High on Everest, there is nothing to breathe.
You see such sights there. This is what we saw, a mountaineer who had died maybe a few years back. The bodies are left there because they are nearly impossible to bring back. You would lose many more lives maybe to just get a body down for proper last rites. So these bodies are left there, and sometimes they get covered up with snow. In the next few years, the snow gets blown off and they can get exposed, and you get to see this. it brings you back to the present moment very, very strongly, that you don't want to end up like that, and all your energies, all your concentration comes back to your climb. This is South Summit, and we have come up from the other side. And once we reach here, when we look towards the summit, we see the Hillary Step, aptly named after Edmund Hillary. It's a knife-edged ridge. There's a joke about it. On the left side, there's a 10,000 foot fall into Nepal. And on the right side, there's a 12,000 foot fall into Tibet. So the joke is a morbid joke. If you want to live longer, then you should fall on the Tibetan side, because then you will fall 2,000 feet more, and so maybe live a few seconds more than falling on the Nepalese side. This is the summit of Everest. There were 19 Indians that day on top, 10 from our team and 9 from the army team, which was there in the same year. And about, I think, 80 people had submitted, a record of sorts till then. Coming down is more difficult. 80% of the deaths occur on the descent. So you have to be energetic enough to be able to return safely. Once you reach the summit, you can't be fully exhausted. Therefore, you have to have that reserve of energy available that you can find your way down safely. This is my picture on the summit. I had here then, and with the national flag. The view from the summit, it looks like Lord of the Rings, like animation, but this is real. And on the other side, to an extent, you can see far away another mountain, Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain. It's about 60 kilometers away. And then back to base camp, and I'll end with a favorite quote of mine from Sir Edmund Hillary. It is not the mountain you conquer yourself. I think Shweta had mentioned in the introduction that I have conquered the mountains, the air. I don't think the word conquer should be used at all. One must be humble in front of nature. Look what it is doing to us with COVID-19. You cannot conquer it. You conquer your own fears and insecurities. You conquer your own questions that whether you can do it or not. Mountains are too big to be conquered. I don't know whether I'll survive the next time I go there, or it'll let me climb at all. So the word conquer is inappropriate. This is my few pictures from the October 2019 half Ironman. I just wanted to complete and be able to feel good about it. What inspires me? I'll just share a few examples. This is a guy called Philippe Croizon from France. He was a steel factory worker, had married, one kid, wife pregnant, so another one on the way. And at about, I think 24, 26 years of age, he got very badly electrocuted, got stuck to a high tension cable, and all his 4 limbs burned off. So he's left with nothing. He's left with 1 elbow and 1 knee, no legs, no hands. He says when he was in the hospital, he got inspired by a woman swimmer who was attempting to swim the English Channel. This happened in 1994. He was in the hospital, got inspired by that lady swimmer, and he decided to swim the English Channel. And he actually managed to do that. 16 years it took him. He used to train for 5 hours a day in swimming, special snorkel-like apparatus because he doesn't have hands and legs, and he swam the English Channel. Can you imagine this kind of a strength of character, holding yourself to such high values and standards that in spite of losing all 4 limbs, which I'm sure most of us would feel very depressed about or suicidal about, he made his life inspirational for so many people. Our very own Arunima Sinha, who was pushed off a train in 2011, and in 2 years' time, she climbed Mount Everest as the first female amputee in the world to summit Everest. She had, her left leg was cut off, right leg has rods in it, she had spinal fractures. And from that kind of a position in life, she summited Everest in 2 years' time, when doctors had told her that it would take 2 years for you to learn to walk with a new leg. But heroes are all around us. I'll show you just a photograph of, you might have read about her. During the lockdown, this young girl, Jyoti, she has a father who was injured, could not cycle himself. She puts him on the back of a cycle. They spend their last few rupees on buying a second-hand bicycle, and then she bicycles 1200 kilometers to bring her father back to his village with no support. So my question to all of us is, and to myself, uh, what is our excuse? What is it that stops you from doing things that you want to do and become stronger and fitter mentally and physically? I'll end with a quote. Robert Browning has said, "Ah, what a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for?" So I feel a sense of fulfillment if it's a life full of struggle. If you at least try to achieve something which is just beyond you or feels like that, improbable, difficult, near impossible, making an attempt is fulfilling. Succeeding is certainly more fulfilling. But if you don't even try, that is a regret which would be difficult to live with as we grow older in life. So thank you very much. This is what I had to say. And I'm open to interaction and questions. Thank you very much once again to Hyderabad Runners Club.
Thank you very much, sir. It was truly inspiring. Actually, in a way, when you started off your presentation, I myself went back to my training days in NPA, where I actually did many things which I thought I could never do, because we in services, we clear the exam, and right there we are, introducing ourselves to, physical fitness for the first time, and it poses many challenges, sir. So to start, sir, let's start with mountain goddess only. So while you were scaling Mount Everest, could you please share with us your experiences and feelings, basically your inner journey as to how you could push yourself? And I really can't believe, being in a district, you could train, from a plain area, you train to scale a mountain. So please share with us your inner journey, sir.
Thank you, Shweta, for this question. Mount Everest is so close to my heart that I was prepared to, if somebody had told me you might lose a limb, you might lose a few fingers, you might lose some toes, lose a bit of ear, nose, that's the price you'll have to pay, I would have said, I'm all right with that. I still want to go. So I was so crazy about it, beyond the point of reason, that the hard work for working for it, it all came so easy. I feel that if it is a goal which is very close to your heart, like Viktor Frankl has said, if you have a what to live for, you can tolerate any how. So all distractions faded away, all socialization stopped. I didn't see a movie for 1.5 years. I was just doing this. And no regrets, because it led me to where I wanted to go. While on the expedition, the fatigue was unimaginable at certain points in time. People asked me whether I was scared. I think I was more grateful. This was such a lifetime opportunity, such an improbable chance given to a person who did not really deserve it. I had not earned it through several years of mountaineering that I could now take a shot at the Everest. I was so grateful, and I was determined that I will lose a limb or two if I need to, but I'll not come back without scaling. So that was a bit of a crazy thing to do, but I felt so grateful, so blessed. Yes.
Very good, sir. So coming back to the basics, sir. So as an ace athlete, this might be a very simple question to you for the kind of things you already did, but how do you define fitness, sir? What is fitness to you?
Okay. I think if I start defining it in the normal way doctors define cardiovascular fitness, muscle strength and endurance, body composition, flexibility, that is not really the complete thing. I feel it starts from the mind. I just give an example of Philippe Croizon, who, losing all his 4 limbs, did something which you and I would struggle with, swimming the English Channel. So I think it's to accept the fact or recognize the fact that we have immense resources of energy, of competence, of possibilities inside us. And once you start pushing your limits, you realize that the resources are unfathomable. You keep putting your hand deeper and deeper, and there's no bottom to it. You can just keep doing with this body, this machine that you have, to any extent. So recognizing that possibility within yourself is the beginning, I think. And then fitness comes easy because you will get involved and you will become more competent in performing.
You actually touched the question, the very beautifully other way around, sir. Now, India, we started Fit India program. Recently, it completed 1 year also. So how do you think we as society and as individuals, how do we make ourselves more fitter?
I think number one would be becoming aware of the fact that fitness will impact all aspects of your life. It'll stop you from doing things you love doing. If you're a foodie like me, you will not be able to eat the stuff that you want. If you will travel, spend time with the kids, play the sports you want, fitness is the foundation of all of that. That awareness is important. Secondly, from the awareness will emerge the prioritization that you now will take out 15 minutes, 20 minutes. In an office, anywhere, I think in any kind of hectic life, taking out time is never a problem, never an acceptable excuse. I had an SP the first time with whom I got posted. He would get off from his car 5 kilometers before his destination, change into his running gear and run the last 5 kilometers. So in the office, you can exercise on your office chair. You can just get down on the floor, do 30 push-ups and get back up. After half an hour, you can lie down, do your 30 sit-ups and come back up. How much time does it take? It takes a bit of passion to do it, I think. Yeah.
Yes, sir, you are rightly put it, because we always look for excuses, especially in the police, given we always have to be ready and we are always distracted by something or the other, and we are more of fighters rather than planners. It's really inspiring as to, I think that's where it starts, in the mind and having that passion. Next question, sir. Mr. Jayashree asks, how much did running help you in your mountaineering experience?
It helped a whole lot. Running is my first love. And in mountaineering, you tend to use your legs more than the upper body. The core is important to carry weight. Second, running gives you a very good cardiovascular fitness, which is a huge plus for going to high altitudes where you have lack of oxygen and you need to perform in spite of that. So I think running is a big plus for any activity. And if people have read that book called Born to Run and Persistence Hunting, where our ancestors thousands of years back could run down a horse or a deer to exhaustion to hunt it and kill it and have food. Running is in our genes. It's in the way our bodies are made. We are natural runners. We are the best runners in nature. No other animal can compete with us as far as endurance running goes.
Yes, sir. So combining the next question from Prasad Vadali, fitness among policemen, particularly in the constable level, is low. What can we at Hyderabad runners do to involve them in running?
Okay. I think that if you could have some satellite small little offices or guiding centers, or people could go and talk to people in various districts as well, not just in Hyderabad. I'm sure the police leadership is seized of this problem that the constables are not very fit. But let me tell you, it's the normal working hours of a police constable extend from 14 to 16 hours. So running may not be the only thing that the person should be counseled to do. I think we need to tell them various ways of remaining fit, and diet is a huge part in that. From my understanding as a fitness enthusiast, 2/3 is the battle with diet and 1/3 is exercise. So I think we need to address their lives holistically, then expect them just to run in spite of not knowing what their constraints are, what are the living conditions, what other compulsions does he have, and then take him on board to make a few steps in both diet as well as being a little more physically active, and counsel him and guide him. We used to do that in Srinagar. I had 20,000 troops under my command, and we could make inroads by counseling, by giving them presentations, by taking them on board to design their menus in a more healthy manner, take less and less oil for their cooking, add dry fruits and fruits to their diet. I used to weigh them all, 20,000 troops. Oh. I used to weigh a full battalion and know the gross weight of a battalion and say you need to bring it down by 100 kilos or 200 kilos. And people used to do that and feel really good about it. So I feel the leadership must take a role in that. They must take responsibility for it and do whatever they can to take people like Runners Club on board and do the best for the men under their command.
Thank you, sir. That shows us some ways within the districts, because we really faced challenges in the COVID times where they had to manage their health, move away. And actually, this is an opportunity for us, as everybody is more aware of their fitness and health now. I think this opportunity, if we can seize in police, I think we will have we'll go a long way in ensuring and bringing that confidence in public and avoid such comments from public. Sir.
One more thing it will do is it will create a better bonding between the officers and men, because the men will realize that you care for them.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So coming back to same, again, I'm at the starters. For the starters, when we join police service, sir, most of us, especially we probationers, when we join as probationers, we are hardly exposed to running. And I'm very glad that you have a very high regard for women officers. But we are very vulnerable at that point where we, join the service. And you spent almost 6 years of your career in just training. So, and you have been in charge of outdoor in National Police Academy as well. How do you approach that problem? Because we as probationers, sir, we are always fearful of, physical exercise. We join the service, but we are not completely open and because it's an unknown thing as to what I will have to do in the training. So how did you approach them?
Okay, this time what we are doing, Shweta, is that even before they join academy, as soon as now their appointment letters are issued, we will get in touch with them and adopt them right now, several months in advance. We will take them on board about the kind of things they need to take care of, losing weight for the next 3 months till they reach us, taking supplements for the lady officers so that they don't have osteoporosis and things like that, taking other things into their routine so that they become a little fitter and stronger by the time they reach us. Secondly, the purpose is to build up an officer, not break him or her down. So we will do a gradual tuning up. And we will also explain the science of exercise so that they are sure that what is being done with them or asked of them is actually for their own good. So they would then imbibe it with a more open heart. So explain every activity and the logic of each one of those. Plus, we will have a deep look at nutrition. Otherwise, the diet in the mess and the exercise sometimes work at cross purposes. So it has to be a wholesome package. We are involving experts like the Runners Club, for example, Hyderabad Runners Club, because running is one major cause of injury because people don't know how to run. So they need to be taught that. We'll have more experts on board from diet, from somebody wants to gain lean mass, somebody wants to lose weight. All that we will bring a lot of expertise on board so that it's an optimal result that we get during this training. Plus injury prevention. Train our instructors, take better care of them, improve medical facilities. All that is right now on.
Very happy to hear that actually, sir. So a little thing about what's happening in NPA for our viewers, that every fortnightly the probationers have a long run. And can anybody guess who runs at the end of that long trail of officers? Around 150 officers running. I think it stretches over 1.5 to 2 kilometers. And sir, the director of academy himself runs in the end. So that is one story shared by one of the probationers. And sir, let me tell you, they're very happy. They are looking at the outdoor activities in a more positive way, which was very joyful for me to listen as well, sir. So that shows leadership, not leading from the front in running. I think you lead from the back, making more people run and not give up, sir. So as you mentioned, sir, injuries, I think this is one part where most of our fitness enthusiasts can go wrong, or go into a wrong way also. So what kind of precautions that you suggest for runners, especially for prevention of injury, and if at all they are injured, how do you manage them?
I think a few basic things that I've learned along the way. Number one is adopting the right style of running. Many of us don't have it, and that causes injuries, causes more impact. It is an impact sport. Second would be good gear, that you invest in that so that it is not something that is cheap and conveys the impact more to your joints and bones. Third would be warm up and cool down. We must warm up before we start, and a lot of flexibility exercises. I have very tight hamstrings. I've been running for so long and I have not paid attention to flexibility. That causes low back pain, that causes more wear and tear on the knee joint. Then also cross training. I feel that mixing cycling with running is an optimal mix, because you're not just exercising your hamstrings, you're exercising the quadriceps also. And that balanced kind of a fitness and muscle toning up will prevent more injuries. Then I would say that if you get injured, it is good to get medical advice, find out what you need to do. Some of us die-hard runners keep running through the injuries and we cause more damage, and then a longer rest is required. So I think you should take injuries seriously, read up about them. A lot of rehabilitation exercises are available on the net, and one should be able to do it for oneself as well.
Thank you, sir. So as we are discussing health, fitness, and diet, now it is a billion dollar industry rather, and there's a lot of, with YouTube, easy access to information on internet, etc. It's a multi-billion dollar industry, and there's a lot of information and misinformation, and a lot of people, especially young girls and boys, are falling for fad diets and fad fitness programs, and the weight loss industry is making full money out of them. What do you suggest for them, sir?
One thing I've learned is that health and fitness, there is no shortcut. You will have to work at it. I have seen probationers here wearing thick jackets and running, thinking they'll sweat more, so they'll lose weight. No, it's fluid loss. You will regain it.
Yes, sir.
So I think we need to encourage the youngsters to read up about the fad that they are going to adopt. They are very tech savvy. They are very well informed, very comfortable on the net. So to the youngsters, I say that when you start adopting any kind of a routine or fad, read up about it, be more informed before you do that. Secondly, don't expect very quick, very drastic results, because if you are doing something like that, it may not be healthy. If you plan to lose 10 kilos in a month's time, you will maybe lose 10 kilos by some drastic measures, but that won't be healthy. You will be actually weaker at the end of it, and you may end up gaining it all the same. So a good, healthy way of nutrition, adequate rest, please sleep 7 to 8 hours every day, and gradual progression in an activity that you like, maybe with a group, so that you sustain it, and regularity is what will get you there.
Yes, sir. I think, given all our artificial intelligence and algorithms around, getting a contradictory information is an effort from the human being. Once we read something, we keep on reading the same thing, because that's what YouTube recommends, that's what Instagram recommends, and that's what Google recommends. So it takes a bit of an effort to read something that is counter to what you have been reading. So this is something where we all have to actually apply our common sense and our mind a bit before getting onto anything, sir, as you rightly said. Next question from Nagir, sir. What has been your favorite country to run? What's your favorite terrain to run? Is it road running or trails or mountains?
I love trail running and in the mountains. So my 50th birthday, I went to Nepal. I ran the Annapurna run, 50 kilometers. I thought I'll celebrate my 50th like that. Next year, I did the 100K in Run of Kutch. But mountains being my first love, the air is much cleaner. It's nice and cold. The views are beautiful, and it's unspoiled. And you're running more or less alone for a large part of the run. So I love trail running in the mountains. I hope as I retire, I would be able to find more time and be able to retain my running fitness to do all that 2-3 years down the line.
What a way to celebrate birthday, sir. And another question from Mr. Srinivas, sir. How much of this adventurous life is part of IPS professional life, and how much of this is your personal passion?
IPS training gives you some taste of it. Some get addicted, some get passionate about it. It is not something that will come your way naturally, but you will be required to face situations which are dangerous, like operations against militants, for example, or facing an ugly, violent mob. So physical courage is something that you will have to face situations in the Indian police service to lead from the front. But getting into adventurous activity is more or less a choice, though IPS will open doors for you. For example, if Shweta wants to do skydiving, she will find it easier to do it than a common citizen being a uniformed officer. So I think it's more of my own passion than the service, but the service gave me the opportunity and the taste of it.
Sir, so recently, as you have already mentioned, you have spent almost 6 years of your career in training, which is not very common among us in the service, sir. We have a small video to share.
अपना अनुभव बताता हूं। मैं जब नया नया मुख्यमंत्री बना तो ये जो आपको ट्रेनिंग दे रहे हैं ना अतुल, वो उस समय मुझे ट्रेनिंग दे रहे थे और मैं उनके अंडर में ट्रेन हुआ हूं, क्योंकि वो मेरे सिक्योरिटी इंचार्ज थे, सीएम सिक्योरिटी के। तो एक दिन क्या हुआ, मुझे ये पुलिस तामझाम, मुझे मेंटली मैं फिट नहीं होता हूं, मुझे बड़ा अटपटा लगता है, लेकिन मजबूरन मुझे उसमें रहना पड़ता था। और कभी कभी मैं कानून नियम तोड़ के कार से उतर जाता था, भीड़ में है तो लोगों से हाथ मिला लेता था। तो एक दिन ये अतुल करवल ने मेरे से टाइम लिया, मेरे चैम्बर में मिलने आए, शायद उनको याद है कि नहीं मुझे मालूम नहीं, और उन्होंने अपनी नाराजगी मुझे प्रकट की। काफी जूनियर थे वो, मैं आज से 20 साल पहले की बात कर रहा हूं। उन्होंने अपने मुख्यमंत्री के सामने आंख में आंख मिला करके अपनी नाराजगी व्यक्त की। उन्होंने कहा, साहब आप ऐसे नहीं जा सकते, कार में से आप अपनी मर्जी से नहीं उतर सकते, आप ऐसे भीड़ में नहीं जा सकते। मैंने कहा, मेरी जिंदगी के तुम मालिक हो क्या, तुम तय करोगे क्या मुझे क्या करना क्या नहीं? वो जरा भी हिले नहीं, मैं उसके सामने बोल रहा हूं आज, वो जरा भी हिले नहीं, डिगे नहीं। उन्होंने मुझे साहब कहा, साहब आप व्यक्तिगत नहीं हो, आप राज्य की संपत्ति हो और मेरी इस संपत्ति को संभालना जिम्मेवारी है, आपको नियमों का पालन करना होगा, ये मेरा आग्रह रहेगा और मैं नियमों का पालन करवाऊंगा। मैं कुछ नहीं बोला। लोकतंत्र का सम्मान भी था, जनप्रतिनिधि का सम्मान भी था, लेकिन अपनी ड्यूटी के संबंध में बहुत ही पोलाइट वर्ड में अपनी बात बताने का तरीका भी था। मेरे जीवन के वो बिल्कुल शुरुआती कालखंड थे मुख्यमंत्री के नाते। वो घटना आज भी मेरे मन पर स्थिर क्यों है? क्योंकि एक पुलिस अफसर ने जिस तरीके से और जिस दृढ़ता से और लोकतंत्र में जनप्रतिनिधि के महत्व को समझते हुए बात रखी थी, मैं मानता हूं हर पुलिस का जवान ये काम कर सकता है, हर कोई कर सकता है। हमें इन बातों को देखना होगा।
सर 1 मिनट अगर हो तो मैं कुछ कहना चाहूंगा। सर आपने उस वाकये की याद की। सर मुझे वो उस समय बहुत डर लग रहा था कि बहुत डांट पड़ेगी मुझे। लेकिन आपकी समझ, आपका बड़प्पन कि आपने उसको इतनी उदारता से लिया, और मैंने उन समय में आपके साथ जो समय गुजरा सर, उस समय बहुत कुछ सीखा। छोटे से छोटे आदमी की, अदने से अदने आदमी की कैसे कदर करनी है, कैसे ध्यान रखना है, मैंने देखा और सीखा। मैं बहुत तहे दिल से शुक्रगुजार हूं सर कि आपने इतना समय हमको दिया, और बहुत मूल बातें जो हैं कि अच्छा इंसान बनना ज़रूरी है, इंसान की कदर करना ज़रूरी है, समाज की ताकत का हम इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, उसको एक अच्छे काम के लिए हम इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं। बहुत बड़ी बातें सर आपने जो उनको कही हैं, मुझे आश्वासन है कि ये अपने काम में ज़रूर शामिल रखेंगे।
Yes, sir, that I need not explain it, sir. It was actually very, very inspiring for us to see how highly regarded you are by everyone, sir. It is said that people who support us are the ones who propel us where we are in our path. Though we are moving ahead, there are somebody behind. So, can you please throw a little insight in the role of your family and other support systems you had in your journey, sir?
Firstly, the Honorable PM was really gracious and magnanimous to have said that about me in an open forum. I am grateful to him for remembering that and mentioning it. I must mention here that he was the chief minister that time when the opportunity of climbing Mount Everest came my way, and he personally supported all that I needed, provided to ensure that I get a chance to climb. His office would clear those files without my ever having to go meet anybody or request anybody. I was spared from active duties, including election duties, to face selection trials and then go for the expedition eventually. The biggest supporter and the support I have in my life is my wife. When the call came that night, when my batchmate told me that there's an expedition going to the Everest, do you want to go? This was about 10 o'clock in the night. As soon as I put the phone down, she saw the look on my face. She said, "What happened?" I said, "This is an offer that I can go, I can make an attempt." She looks at me and says, rather than saying anything else, she says, "So when you go, just make sure there is someone there to teach maths to the children." So she didn't question my desire to go on such a dangerous, whatever you might call it now, I didn't need to do it. So I was selfish in following it, my own passions and my own dreams. And she was there to support at a probable cost of what it could have been. So she's been really, really supportive. I think I have found support wherever I have gone. The government supported me, the family, friends, they all got together. They knew I was a little crazy and I had to be allowed to do what I wanted to do. Otherwise, I'll pull a long face, I'll be morose, I'll be quarrelsome. So it's good to let me go and do my stuff. So I think if you really want to do something, explain to your family and friends, it's for a good cause. For example, if you want to be more fit and you want them to adjust a little bit here and there so you can find some time for fitness, they will not grudge it. They would get behind you and give support.
Thank you, sir. That's very inspiring, rather, sir. So, as you expressed, the times of COVID, this pandemic, lockdowns have the kind of stress they have created on us as a society, as individuals. Our routines have gone out of hands, job losses, etc. So, how do you think being fit helps us, muddle through these times, sir?
I think the mind-body connection is very strong. Everything is interconnected. So all lives, whether of the common people or of the Ambanis, will have their ups and downs. Look at what's happened to Anil Ambani, for example. So you cannot have an assured guarantee that you shall face no downs, no adversity shall cross your path. And my understanding, my learning is that if you are fit physically, you will be strong mentally also. And then you would be able to weather through these problems even at the cost of physical stress because you have a foundation of fitness. In police, for example, if you are hit by riots and for the next 3 months you don't get adequate sleep, if you're a fit person, you will sail through. Otherwise, you'll end up with some lifestyle disease or some other collapse and be hospitalized. Or if there's a bankruptcy, you lose money, you have an accident, you lose a limb. If you are physically fit, you will bounce back stronger. It will give you resilience to face anything in life. And you cannot predict what life will throw at you. Look at COVID-19, it's disrupted our normal way of looking at life. So factor X is always there. So it's good to be prepared the best you can be to face anything in life. And if you are fit and you are energetic and strong, anything can come your way, you'll overcome it.
Yes, sir. That's why Hyderabad runners could, easily start a webinar just like that and still, try to make people fit and be, part of their active lives. And last but one question, sir, from the audience. Mr. Rajiv wants to know advice on new runner who are asthmatic but willing to take up running. People who are, having asthmatic disease. What is your advice on taking up running, sir?
Rajiv, I can't really give you a very clear medical opinion on that. I would say start slow, mix running and walking, which is what we do with the beginners. You could run for a minute, walk for a minute, and as you become stronger, run for 2 minutes, walk for a minute, and eventually maybe able to run a mile and then walk for a minute, which is one of the accepted ways of doing uh, long distance runs. Uh, Jeff Galloway has a book on that, on the walk and run method. You can read that. Keep your inhaler handy so that exertion induced asthma, if it comes on, then you can handle it. And I would say talk to a medical expert and also explore yoga and pranayama. Many people have been able to overcome asthma from the Indian traditional wisdom than Western style of medicine. So keep your mind open to that and explore those options as well.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure that was very helpful for Mr. Raju. Final question, sir. Our webinar's concept today was service, valor, and fitness, sir. So some final words for our audience of motivation and inspiration to the youth of this country in these areas, sir.
I think that the younger generations now are very wise. They have so many more possibilities that people in my generation had. And my understanding is that if you apply yourself fully to any objective, the likelihood is you will actually be able to accomplish it. You need to be more focused on what you want, not get distracted, not fritter away your precious time in FOMO, as we call it, fear of missing out, and get serious about something that you really, really want. And you can certainly get it. The only question you ask yourself is, how much do I want it? If you want it enough, nothing can stop you. And I feel that one last thing I want to add is, do not ignore relationships. In your ambition for excellence, for maybe material possessions, for success, relationships are very, very important to make you strong, to be a safety net, to be there with you, to support you. So do respect the relationships that you count on and cherish them and invest in them as well.
Thank you, sir. That was really wonderful. It has been a pleasure interacting with you and a memorable experience for myself, sir. I'm sure I'll think over this, and definitely you have challenged some of my, you have, inspired me in many ways, sir, right from my first day of training when Akun Sabharwal sir mentioned, about you. And I'm very happy that, through Hyderabad Runners, I could get this opportunity. Now I request Mr. Musharraf to give a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Shweta, for the question answer session. Friends, it was yet another informative and very inspiring session from Hyderabad Runners. My key takeaways from Sir's presentation today was starting with normalcy or even with weakness does not stop one from achieving real excellence in terms of fitness. Some great examples shared by Sir, including himself, of achieving the greatest heights on the planet of the Mount Everest. And sir, the most important thing that you said, and I will never forget, not being fit is a big no. So that is something that all of us have to remember, and particularly in times like COVID, we have to get back to this, that we cannot be unfit, let whatever comes our way. And thank you extremely very much, sir, and our deepest gratitude for taking out time and sharing your experiences with Hyderabad Runners, sir. And thank you, our audience today, for being with all of us. If you have any questions with Atul, sir, please feel free to ask in the comment section. And the recording of this presentation and the entire conversation is available on the Hyderabad Runners Facebook and the Hyderabad Runners YouTube page. And please do remember that from the third week of October, the time is now shifted to 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., the weekly webinars. And until then, this is Musharraf, Nirmal District Collector, and a team of Hyderabad Runners signing off. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you, one and all. Good evening.